Ink Ribbon.
When I was in school for game design, I was told by all my professors that there is no such thing as originality, and I was actually discouraged from trying to be original and instead told to take something that already existed and put my own spin on it. Whether you want to believe it or not, this is the bread and butter of the gaming industry. Think of any game you love, and I guarantee it was inspired by something before it. Well, sometimes inspiration is too vague of a word and developers can just steal an entire game. It happens all the time, and sometimes the rip-offs can end up way more successful than the original, making millions of dollars and leaving the original developers to wallow in misery. So without further ado, here are 10 insanely popular games you didn't realize were rip-offs.
Number 10.
Fez. On the left is the hugely popular indie game Fez. On the right is the underlooked PSP game Crush. Now, you can compare Fez to games like Paper Mario, Echochrome, or Nebula, but it's my opinion that it most resembles Crush. Both games have enough to aesthetically be differentiated, but at their core design they are fundamentally the same.
Number 9.
Angry Birds. In the 2000s, Flash games were all the rage, and one of the best ones that I actually played as a teen was Crush the Castle. Your goal was to hurl various objects at a physics-based castle and kill all the little people. I don't think I need to tell you how Angry Birds is just a little too similar. Reskinned with a family-friendly theme of birds and pigs and having Apple support, Angry Birds did pretty well for itself. The biggest difference between these two games is the vast amount of money one made over the other, along with all the physical merchandise and movies. I should also mention that you can still play Crush the Castle on your phone or on a web browser. It's worth a try and in my opinion the better game of the two.
Number 8.
Miss PacMan. So once in a while you have a pretty ironic outcome, and in this case it's the sequel to the hit game PacMan. Namco released PacMan in partnership with Midway, who distributed it in North America, and it was making both companies a ton of money. So naturally, Midway was eager to release a sequel but was frustrated that Namco was taking so long to do so. Meanwhile, 3 computer nerds made these mod chip things that you could plug into existing arcade cabinets in order to upgrade them, which would be cheaper than making all new arcade cabinets. They focused on 2 games to mod in order to present to their companies. The first was Missile Command, which Atari promptly took them to court for and was not happy about, and the second was a PacMan mod called Crazy Auto. Not only did Midway like the game, they actually loved it so much that they went behind Namco's back and signed a deal, eventually turning it into Miss PacMan and of course went down in gaming history as one of the best games ever. So yes, contrary to what you think, Miss PacMan was not an official sequel, but actually a rip-off of a rip-off.
Number 7.
Guitar Hero. In Japan, arcades are still very much alive. Regardless of your feeling towards them, Konami is one of the biggest supporters of arcade machines, right alongside Sega, and in 1999 they released the arcade game Guitar Freaks. 6 years later, in 2005, Guitar Hero appeared on the scene. I could get into a lengthy explanation with some facts about some boring stuff that no one really cares about, but I won't. It's the exact same game, but in your living room instead of the arcade.
Number 6.
Simpsons Road Rage. The Simpsons is one of the most famous franchises in the world and can be easily recognized by anyone, even if you've never seen an episode of the show. So you can imagine it would be easy for them to capitalize on that with a video game. And they have. Infamously, there was the Simpsons arcade game, which is beloved by pretty much everyone who ever played it. So why did they do such a blatant ripoff of Crazy Taxi? Oh yeah, in case you didn't realize, this is as blatant of a ripoff as you can get. Which is why Sega almost immediately filed a lawsuit against them. They of course settled out of court, but I hope it worked out because not only did The Simpsons Road Rage outsell Crazy Taxi, but the developer Hitmaker who made the series eventually went out of business.
Number 5.
Super Mario Bros. 2. One of the most well-known games ever, Super Mario Bros., was a platformer that went left to right. Its sequel, Super Mario Bros. 2, had completely different gameplay focusing on going upward. But it was the only Mario game that ever played like this and still remains totally unique to every other game in the franchise, even up until now. Well, the reason for this completely different gameplay style is because it's actually a clone of another game called Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic, which was released in 1987. So in Japan, there's a TV channel called Fuji TV, and it was a game revolving around its mascots. Fun fact from someone who lived in Japan, everything has a mascot. Cities, train stations, even the police and fire departments. You're welcome. Anyway, this game caught the eye of a few executives and they decided to cosmetically change the game to feature characters from Mario, and the rest is history.
Number 4.
Candy Crush. One of the most infamous games of all time that took the mobile world by storm and occupied the time of soccer moms everywhere is Candy Crush. Now, if you're someone who thinks that Candy Crush is stupid or not that big of a deal, I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to guess how much money per day it makes. Ready? As of writing this, Candy Crush makes $4.2 million a day. Every day! $4.2 million. Now, what makes this even more painful to say is that Candy Crush is a complete ripoff of a game called Candy Swipe that came out in 2010, a full 2 years earlier. When you see them side by side, it's a pretty easy comparison. If you're wondering how this stuff happens, it usually comes down to who has the bigger marketing budget.
Number 3.
Plague Inc. Plague Inc. is a game where you play as a disease and your goal is to infect and kill the entire global population. Some people haven't heard of this game, but if you're someone who has played a lot of Flash games on the internet, there's a good chance that this looks familiar to you. If it does, it's because it's a ripoff of a Flash game called Pandemic. Around the time its developer was releasing Pandemic 2.5, Plague Inc. appeared on the scene and there was a back and forth from both companies before ultimately they both backed down. I'm not really sure what the deal was there, but I do have to admit that like Miss Pac-Man, Plague Inc. is the better game.
Number 2.
Minecraft. So in case you haven't heard of it, there's a little game called Minecraft, and it revolves around building. I guess crafting would be a better word. Anyway, it's a more or less known origin story that Minecraft was the product of a single developer, and over the span of almost 10 years it slowly gained a following and eventually became the mega smash hit that it is now. Unlike Infiniminer. Never heard of Infiniminer? Don't worry, most people haven't, because just like Minecraft, it was also a small indie game developed by one person. The only difference was that it was his original idea and Minecraft was a copy of it. But don't worry, it has a happy ending. The game actually proved to be too difficult for the developer and the source code was bought and is now owned by MIT.
Number 1.
The Sims. The best-selling PC game of all time is The Sims, published by EA, and it looks like this. But what if I told you it's actually a bit of a ripoff of an Activision game that came out before it called Little Computer People? Also called House on a Disc, it was marketed as a life simulator way before The Sims existed. A full 15 years before, to be exact. Now obviously the technical limitations make it a bit of an eyesore, but the experience was basically the same. The main difference being that you had one man in a house versus characters that you'd create on your own. Will Wright, the creator of The Sims, actually cited the game as inspiration for The Sims and expanded on it, adding the element of building houses and customization. And that's it for this video. If you like this video, then check out my other stuff and click that like button. Don't forget to check out the community tab where you can vote on future videos. I'm Kai Morgan, and as always, thanks for watching Ink Ribbon.